They're tasty, colorful, they satisfy your hunger and they make you very happy. Welcome to the world of beans. My name is Srikant and welcome to our channel Happy Belly Fish. And today we are going to talk just about these things, beans. No, not this one, these. People often get confused what beans are. So are they peas, are they lentils, what are beans after all? So in simple words, beans, they belong to a family of plants called legumes. And they have siblings that are lentils and peas. That's all you need to remember. Beans will also be found in several forms. They can be found fresh, frozen, or even in dried forms. But most commonly, you will see them in dried forms. And just in case you're wondering why do they even dry the beans, it's just because you can store them for several months, sometimes up to 2 years or even more. And because the world of legumes is so huge, there is peas, there are lentils, and then beans. So the numbers will be in hundreds. Which is why we will just talk about beans today, and we'll stick to some of the most common ones. Red kidney beans, white kidney beans, black beans, navy beans, pinto beans, chickpeas or garbanzo beans, great northern beans, soya beans, azuki beans, and many more. These are the names that you might have heard most commonly. And these are very easy to identify. They look like small pebbles and they come in different colors. A lot of beans will be known by their own local names in different parts of the world. For example, chickpeas will be called as garbanzo beans in North America, Egyptian beans in Egypt, or Kabuli chana or chole in India. So if you're new to them, then start with the variety that are easily available in the store near you. Now I know the canned beans must be the first thing that's coming to your mind. But avoid them unless and until you absolutely have no time or you are in no situation to cook. And if you are going to use canned beans because you have no other option, then make sure you rinse them. Not the can itself, but the beans inside them, so that you get rid of the sodium and the sugar that is there in it to preserve the beans. You can also make a better choice when you're buying canned beans. For example, canned chickpea in brine is better than canned beans or white beans that you often get in tomato sauce, at least in terms of nutrition. Beans are superfoods and are ancient. Like so ancient that we know them even before the time we knew that the earth was actually round. It can be had in several ways, but let's look at the most obvious one, soaking and cooking, which is what you must be wondering. What do you do with these dried beans after all? So remember this, beans must be soaked in water for at least 8 hours, which is why you need to have patience and some amount of planning in place. So you must be like, tomorrow I'm going to eat chickpeas, so let me soak them first before I go to bed. You must also have a vague idea of the recipe on what you're going to do with the beans once they're soaked. Not like you wake up in the morning, look at the soaked beans and wonder, now what? What do I do with these things? If you're living in an area where the water is hard, then soak the beans with some amount of salt that is added to the water. Rehydrating the beans this way will soften them and make the cooking time much less. Otherwise, you might be like just waiting and the beans are never cooking. It also prevents the beans from exploding and losing its shape when you cook them, and it will give you a creamier texture. Once the soaking is done, make sure you discard the water. Don't end up cooking the beans in the same water in which you have soaked them. So you discard the water and you rinse it once or twice. This will remove the smell that is there. Alright, now that you know that soaking the beans in water makes them soft, it doesn't mean that you soak them forever. Don't soak them for a week or even 3 days. It will start fermenting the beans and it will smell really odd. So if that happens, then you might have to rinse the bean once or twice. And when you boil them, make sure you boil them with some amount of bay leaf or cinnamon or even green cardamom. But remember, the spices that you use, they have to be whole spice, like the whole cinnamon, the whole bay leaf and the whole cardamom, not their powdered version. Alright, now the beans are rehydrated, they are soaked for good enough time, and now it's the time for you to cook. If you don't have a pressure cooker, you want to cook it in an open pot, then just cover the beans with water in the ratio of 1:3. 1 cup of bean, 3 cups of water. And bring the water to a boil and then let the beans simmer, which means you reduce the flame. And it will take about 45 minutes or even longer. Some beans can take up to an hour or even 2 hours, depending on how many beans, what's the quantity of beans that you're cooking and the type of the beans that you're cooking. And if you think the water is going to evaporate all of it and the beans have still not cooked, no worries, just add some more water to it. The larger beans like chickpeas, red kidney beans will take much longer time than the smaller ones like mung beans. So getting the time right is something that will come with experience. You will get an estimate, yes, chickpeas take about 45 minutes, but it might take 10 minutes more or 10 minutes less. The beans are cooked when you can squish it between your fingertips. But if you have your fingers that are reserved for very important jobs, like they need to look really beautiful all the time, or you have to keep using them in different kind of jobs, then you might like to use some spoon or a fork to test if it goes through very easily. That's when you know the beans are cooked. These cooked beans can be had as it is, or you can spice them up a bit with some seasoning spices like zatar or dukkha. This is like the easiest way. Make sure you just add some olive oil on top of it, then the flavor will come out much better. Or if you want to be more adventurous, or if you're bored of just having cooked beans with some seasoning, then you can make cutlets like I've shown in this video. You can add them to your salad, or you can add them to some grain and make a one-pot recipe with it. Now, the spices will not just make them taste better or even make them smell better. Most people are sometimes put off by the smell that beans have, the cooked beans have. So if you use spices, you might be able to avoid that. But there's one more thing spices do. They make you or help you digest these beans better. Because if you do not digest them well, then you might find yourself in solitary confinement for excessive greenhouse gas emissions. We do not come fitted with a catalytic converter after all. Depending on the type of bean that you're cooking, let's say chickpea, you can make hummus with it, or you can take any other beans, steep them with some herbs and spices or even aromatics, some vegetables, and make a nice stew. You can flavor them the way you like and take inspiration from several recipes that can be found around the world. We have a lot of videos with recipes on beans on our channel, so make sure you check them out, leave us a like, and subscribe to our channel. Now, what if you don't want to cook the beans? You don't have the time and patience to actually do that. So the good news is that some of the beans that you have soaked can also be sprouted. I'm saying some of the beans because not every bean might taste great when they are sprouted. You can begin with mung beans, which are easiest to sprout. One basic rule to remember though is that cooked beans cannot be sprouted. So leaving a canned bean open is not going to work. It might actually sprout the insects and rodents out of the hidden places in your house. Try adding some fresh lemon juice or spices like sumac, tamarind, or dried mango powder to your dish when there are beans in them, sprouted or cooked. This will help you absorb the iron that's in the bean. Traditional wisdom says that one must always combine legumes with some kind of grain, as grains contain some amino acids that a bean or lentil may not have. This can be rice, wheat, corn, or millets, which is why you get beans and lentils served with tortillas in Mexico, with bread, couscous, teff, and other grains in North Africa, and naan and rice and roti, commonly in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. I'm sure I do not know all the ways how it is served or paired with, around the world. So let me know what beans are eaten the most in your part of the world and how do you eat them. There is one misconception that I would definitely like to talk about, that people think beans are very hard to cook. They require a lot of planning and it takes forever to cook. My advice would be start with something that is smaller and faster to cook, something like mung beans. Use spices in your food to make them interesting, and also invest in a small pressure cooker, preferably an instant pot so that you don't burn your food when you're away taking a shower. And if you want to know more about spices, there is a link to a free spice guide in the video description below. Beans and lentils are often associated with one more thing, very infamously, bloating and flatulence, and nobody wants to feel like a birthday balloon after having lunch. Some people digest them better and some people don't. So if you're new to this type of food, then give yourself some time to adjust. Consume them in small quantities at first. Cook them well and start with smaller variety of beans. And no matter how strong your digestion is, these things are best avoided for dinners. They actually fit in very well with breakfast and lunch. And if your digestion is weak, then avoid recipes where beans and meats are cooked together. A lighter meal will always be a happier meal. Also, try eating them warm, as cold food will suppress your digestion. And please do not consume a watermelon or an ice cream for at least an hour after you have downed a bowl of beans. Please let me know in the comments your victories and struggle with beans, and what your favorite recipes are, and if you'd like me to make a recipe for you or talk about something else. And don't forget to talk about me in the parties that you go to and make me viral so that I can make more such amazing videos for you.